Wails of anguish filled the classroom as the young alien students learned the truth of humanity's brutality, a truth so horrifying it brought even these battle-hardened hierogens to tears. In the dimly lit room on planet Koth Prime, Ymir, the grizzled old veteran, his hulking 8-foot frame rippling with muscle under reptilian scales, faced the 30 young recruits. "Listen up," Ymir barked. His prosthetic arm whirred as he slammed it on the lectern. "Today you will learn what happens when the Hirogen dominion is defied, when lesser beings forget their place and dare to challenge our superiority. 50 Earth years ago we found a pitiful band of humans, just 5,000 strong, huddling on a ball of dirt called Zeta Hercules IV. Our warriors issued one simple demand: total surrender and submission to Hirogen rule. But did they comply, as any sane creature would in the face of our might? No, their arrogance was matched only by their stupidity." Ymir's eyes narrowed as he spat out the name like a curse. Jacob Hicks, a former Earth soldier who fancied himself a leader. That fool had the audacity to refuse us. He even had the gall to send a distress signal, as if anyone could save them from the wrath they had brought upon themselves. The young Hirogens leaned forward, eyes wide, hanging on Ymir's every word. They knew the history of their people's conquests, but this was a story they had never heard before, a story of defiance in the face of certain doom. And now they would learn the terrible price paid by those who dared to stand against the Hirogen dominion. Ymir's voice boomed through the classroom. "Our fleet of 50 warships, led by the mighty HDS Koth's Fury, descended upon Zeta Hercules IV like a swarm of angry hornets. We expected the puny humans to cower in fear, but instead their 30 ships rose to meet us in battle. The void of space lit up with the flashes of directed energy weapons and the explosions of disintegrating ships." The young Hirogens listened intently, their eyes wide with a mix of awe and disbelief. Ymir continued, his voice dripping with disdain. "The humans, with their advanced shield technology, managed to destroy 20 of our vessels. 20! While we only managed to take out a measly 5 of theirs. It was a humiliation that stung deep." Ymir's prosthetic arm whirred as he clenched his fist. But that was just the beginning. On the planet's surface, our ground forces, 10,000 strong, landed near the human settlement. We were ready to crush them like the insects they were. But those damn colonists, supported by a small group of Earth Marines, fought back using guerrilla tactics and improvised weapons. The veteran's eyes narrowed as he spat out the next words. And then there was Jacob Hicks. That bastard led a squad of 10 elite soldiers and infiltrated our command post. They assassinated our ground force commander, Kothgar, a true warrior who stood 9 feet tall. Hicks and his men snuck a miniature nuclear device into Kothgar's personal quarters and detonated it. The explosion killed not only Kothgar, but also his top lieutenants. It threw our forces into disarray. The students murmured among themselves, shocked by the audacity of the humans. Ymir slammed his fist on the lectern, silencing them instantly. Ymir's voice took on a more somber tone. The class could see a deep pain in his eyes, one that spoke of a loss so profound it could never be forgotten. After Kothgar fell, after our command structure was thrown into chaos by Hicks' cowardly attack, we lost ourselves in our rage. The fleet's guns turned towards the planet. Plasma rained from the sky, a storm of fire and fury that consumed the humans' pathetic settlement. Buildings crumbled, melted. Thousands of the humans, their mates, their spawn, incinerated in an instant. The old warrior's gaze grew distant, as if he was reliving the moment. Hicks and his team had slithered out of the command post like the snakes they were. They watched the carnage from a hill far from the colony. I still remember the look on Hicks' face as he called his fleet, begging them to save whoever was left. Ymir's prosthetic fist clenched, servos whining. Admiral Ivanova, in her arrogance, thought she could snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. Her ships darted in close to ours, trading fire at ranges where even a glancing hit could gut a ship. All the while their little shuttles dashed to the surface, grabbing whatever scraps of humanity they could. A cruel smile crossed Ymir's face. But Hicks, he wasn't content to just run. No, he had to twist the knife. He and his squad of vermin managed to sneak aboard the Koth's Fury. They made it all the way to the reactor core and rigged it to blow. The pride of the Hirogen fleet lost in a flash of light 500 brave warriors, snuffed out by treachery. In the chaos, the humans fled like the cowards they were. They left their dead and their dignity behind on Zeta Hercules IV, but their treachery, their insolence in the face of Hirogen supremacy, it would not go unanswered. No, this was just the beginning of a war that would shake the very foundations of the galaxy. The humiliated Hirogen fleet limped away from Zeta Hercules IV, their once mighty armada reduced to a shadow of its former self. In the aftermath of their Pyrrhic victory, the human ships regrouped at the nearby Epsilon Eridani system, a long-time ally of Earth. There, in the bustling shipyards orbiting the system's fourth planet, the battered vessels underwent desperately needed repairs and resupply. Amidst the controlled chaos of the repair efforts, Jacob Hicks found himself summoned to a briefing room deep within the bowels of the station. The room was Spartan, its walls adorned only with the crest of the Earth Defense Force. Admiral Ivanova stood at the head of the table, her face a mask of grim determination. "Captain Hicks," she said, her voice carrying the weight of the lives lost and the battles yet to come, "your actions on Zeta Hercules IV were nothing short of heroic. You dealt the Hirogens a blow they won't soon forget." Hicks nodded, his jaw set. The losses weighed heavily on him, the faces of the fallen etched into his memory. "But," Ivanova continued, "we can't afford to rest on our laurels. We need intel on the Hirogens' capabilities, their infrastructure. That's where you come in." She tapped a button on the table, bringing up a holographic display of a planet. It was a harsh world, its surface a patchwork of sprawling urban centers and heavily fortified military installations. "This is Koth Secundus, a key Hirogen stronghold. Population 10 million, mostly civilians, but it's what's hidden beneath the surface that concerns us." The display zoomed in, highlighting a complex buried deep underground. "Our operatives believe the Hirogens are developing a bioweapon here, one specifically designed to target human physiology. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to infiltrate this facility. Gather what intelligence you can and destroy it." Ivanova nodded. "Assemble your best, Captain. Equip them as you see fit, but understand this is a covert operation. If you're caught, we'll deny any knowledge of your actions." Hicks stood, his eyes hard. "Understood, Admiral." Within hours, Hicks had his team. 20 of the best soldiers humanity had to offer, each handpicked for their skills and their unwavering dedication to the cause. Among them was Lieutenant Michael "Spike" Thompson, a seasoned veteran who had fought alongside Hicks on a dozen worlds, and Sergeant David Kim, an expert in infiltration and sabotage. In the armory, the team donned their gear. Matte black armors fitted with the latest in stealth technology. Cloaking devices, capable of rendering them nearly invisible to both visual and thermal scans, were integrated into each suit. Neural implants, allowing for silent telepathic communication, were surgically embedded into each soldier's skull. They were ghosts, phantoms in the night, and so they were named Phantom Squad. The journey to Koth Secundus was tense, the squad's stealth ship slipping past Hirogen patrols and sensor nets with barely a whisper. They landed in the dead of night, on a barren plateau, far from the watchful eyes of the Hirogen security forces. What they found there was horrifying. Row upon row of stasis pods, each containing a human test subject. Men, women, children, all in varying stages of mutation, their bodies warped by the Hirogens' twisted experiments. Sergeant Kim set to work, his fingers flying over the control panels as he downloaded every scrap of data he could find. Captain Hicks and the others planted explosives, rigging the facility to blow. But as they made their way back to the surface, all hell broke loose. Alarms blared, the facility's lighting shifting to an angry red. The Hirogens had discovered them. Phantom Squad fought like demons, their pulse rifles spitting streams of superheated plasma as they carved a path through the Hirogen security forces. But the enemy was relentless, wave after wave of heavily armed troopers pouring into the fray. Sergeant Kim fell first, a plasma bolt catching him in the throat. Then others, 4 more of Phantom Squad, cut down in the furious exchange of fire. But they wouldn't die in vain. With a final desperate push, the surviving members of Phantom Squad broke through to the surface, racing across the blood-soaked ground to their waiting ship. As the craft lifted off, the night sky lit up with the orange glow of a massive explosion, the bioweapons facility vanishing in a maelstrom of fire and debris. In the cockpit, Captain Hicks gripped the controls, his knuckles white. Tears streamed down his face, grief and rage warring within him. He thought of Kim, of the others who had given their lives. "This isn't over," he whispered, his voice a hoarse growl. "Not by a long shot. The Hirogens will pay for what they've done. I swear it." The stealth ship slipped into Earth orbit, its black hull blending seamlessly with the void of space. On board, Captain Hicks sat in the darkened briefing room, the weight of the bioweapon samples heavy in his hands. The door hissed open, and Admiral Ivanova strode in, her face etched with grim lines. "We need to move fast," she said without preamble. "The UEC is waiting." Hicks nodded and followed her out, the samples secured in a reinforced case. They boarded a shuttle, the short journey to UEC headquarters, passing in tense silence. Inside the towering structure, they were met by a team of scientists in hazmat suits. They took the samples, their eyes widening as they saw the contents. "We'll start analyzing these immediately," the lead scientist said. Hours turned into days as the scientists worked, their findings painting a horrifying picture. The Hirogens had been developing this bioweapon for years, refining it to target human DNA with ruthless efficiency. In the council chambers, the debate raged. Some argued for restraint, that to use such a weapon would make them no better than the Hirogens. But the majority, faced with the existential threat to humanity, saw no other choice. "Project Nemesis is authorized," the council leader said, his voice heavy. "Captain Hicks, you will lead the mission." In the research labs, the virus was engineered, a microscopic harbinger of death designed to unravel Hirogen DNA. It was loaded into missiles, each one capable of spreading the virus across an entire planet. Hicks stood before his team, now designated Strike Force Omega. 20 ships, each one a marvel of stealth technology and advanced weaponry, stood ready in the hangar. "So you all know what's at stake," Hicks said, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. "The Hirogens won't stop until every last one of us is dead. This is our chance to strike back, to ensure the survival of our species. But let's be clear, what we're about to do, it crosses a line. We'll be unleashing a weapon of mass destruction, one aimed at civilians as much as soldiers. If anyone wants to walk away, I won't blame you." No one moved. These were soldiers, warriors to the core. They had seen what the Hirogens were capable of, the worlds left burned and lifeless in their wake. In the privacy of his quarters, Hicks stared at his reflection in the mirror. He hardly recognized the man staring back at him. The scars of battle, both physical and mental, had taken their toll. He thought of the millions of Hirogens on Koth Prime, of the virus that would soon be unleashed upon them. Could he really do this? Could he condemn an entire species to a horrific death? But then he thought of Zeta Hercules Thor, of the colonists slaughtered without mercy. He thought of Sergeant Kim and the others who had fallen, their blood crying out for vengeance. He straightened his uniform, his jaw set. The Hirogens had made their choice. Now it was time for humanity to make theirs. The 20 stealth ships of Strike Force Omega cut through the void, slipping past the sensor nets and patrol routes that guarded the approaches to Koth Prime. In the lead ship, Captain Hicks stood on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the view screen. A planet hung in the blackness, its surface a mottled grey and green, its continents sprawling under wispy clouds. As the ships drew closer, a priority signal flashed on the communications console. Lieutenant Thompson frowned at the display. "Captain, we're being hailed. It's coming from the planet's surface." Hicks turned, his brow furrowed. "Put it through." The view screen flickered, resolving into the image of a Hirogen. But this one was different. Instead of the ornate armor of a warrior, He wore simple robes, his scales dulled with age. "I am Corvash," the Hirogen said, his voice deep and resonant. "Leader of the Koth insurgency. We have been fighting against the tyranny of our own government, against this unjust war with your people." Hicks leaned forward, his interest piqued. "Go on." "We can help you," Corvash said. "We have agents within the Planetary Defense Network. We can guide you through, help you reach your target undetected. All we ask in return is your support in overthrowing the High Council." Hicks considered for a long moment. The virus weighed heavy in the ship's hold, a nightmare waiting to be unleashed. But here, unexpectedly, was another path. A chance to end this war without genocide. Under the guidance of the Koth insurgency, Strike Force Omega descended to the planet's surface, their ships slipping through gaps in the defense grid like ghosts. They landed in the rocky highlands outside the capital city, the sprawling metropolis glittering under the harsh sun. They moved out, following the coordinates provided by Corvash. The capital loomed ahead, its towering spires and sprawling domes a testament to Hirogen might. As they entered the city outskirts, all hell broke loose. Hirogen forces, alerted to their presence, swarmed out to meet them. Plasma fire filled the air, searing the walls of buildings and turning vehicles into molten slag. Strike Force Omega fought back, their advanced weapons cutting through the Hirogen ranks. They pushed deeper into the city, each block a hard-fought battle. At the city's heart, they reached the government complex, a massive structure of reinforced stone and gleaming metal. Hicks led the charge, blasting through the heavy doors and storming into the central chamber. The Hirogen High Council waited there, seated in a semicircle on a raised dais. At their center was the High Commander, his armor adorned with the trophies of 100 hunts. The commander laughed, a harsh grating sound. "You think you've won, human? You've only sealed your doom." From the shadows a figure emerged. It was Corvash, but gone was the humble rebel leader. Now he wore the armor of a Hirogen warrior, his face twisted in a sneer. "Did you really think we would betray our own kind?" Corvash mocked. "This was all a trap, human, and you walked right into it." All around the chamber, hidden doors slid open, revealing dozens of Hirogen warriors. They leveled their weapons at Strike Force Omega, a ring of death closing in. Hicks looked around, his heart sinking. They had been betrayed, led like lambs to the slaughter. But as he met the eyes of his team, he saw no fear, no surrender. Only grim resolve. They knew what they had to do. Hicks's finger tightened on the trigger, ready to unleash hell. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. The Hirogens would pay for their treachery, one way or another. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air, scorching the walls of the Hirogen High Council chamber. Captain Hicks ducked behind a pillar, his heart pounding in his chest. They were surrounded, outnumbered, and outgunned. Corvash's betrayal had cut deep, leaving them trapped in the heart of the enemy's stronghold. Hicks looked to his team, their faces grim with determination. They knew the stakes, knew the price of failure. Earth, the colonies, everything they held dear, hung in the balance. Lieutenant Thompson nodded, his fingers flying over the detonator. "But, sir, the civilians—" "Do it!" Hicks ordered, his voice cracking with the weight of his decision. Explosions rocked the city, the ground heaving beneath their feet. Buildings crumbled, fires raged, and screams echoed through the streets. The Hirogen warriors faltered, their attention divided between the human strike team and the sudden chaos engulfing their capital. Hicks and his team seized the opportunity, fighting their way through the smoke and rubble. They moved as one, covering each other's backs, their weapons spitting plasma at any Hirogen foolish enough to stand in their way. But the enemy was relentless. For every Hirogen that fell, 2 more seemed to take their place. Strike Force Omega was being whittled down, their numbers dwindling with each passing minute. A plasma bolt caught Lieutenant Thompson in the chest, burning through his armor like paper. He fell, his weapon clattering to the ground. Hicks was at his side in an instant, dragging him to cover. "Hold on, Spike," Hicks pleaded, his hands slick with his friend's blood. "Just hold on." But Thompson's eyes were already glazing over, his life slipping away. Around them the battle raged on, half of Strike Force Omega falling to the Hirogen onslaught. Hicks gritted his teeth, tears stinging his eyes. He had to get his team out, had to complete the mission, for Earth, for humanity, for the friends he had lost. They fought their way back to their ships, every step a battle, every breath a struggle. As they broke atmosphere, Hicks looked down at the virus capsule in his hand. Project Nemesis, humanity's last hope. He gave the order, his voice hollow. The capsule launched, streaking towards the planet's surface. Within hours, the virus would spread across Koth Prime, a death sentence for millions. In the chaos of their escape, Corvash's voice crackled over the comm, pleading, begging for mercy. But Hicks closed the channel, his heart hardened by betrayal and loss. As they entered the void of space, the weight of his actions settled on Hicks' shoulders. He had done what was necessary, what Earth had demanded of him, but the ghosts of Koth Prime, the innocents caught in the crossfire, would haunt him for the rest of his days. News of their victory spread like wildfire. Strike Force Omega returned to Earth, hailed as heroes, saviors of humanity. But for Hicks, the accolades rang hollow. He had seen the face of war, the depths to which both sides could sink. And as the UEC began mass-producing Project Nemesis, as the Hirogen fell world by world to the vengeful virus, Hicks couldn't help but wonder. In their quest for survival, for vengeance, had humanity lost something far more precious? The war ended in a matter of months, the Hirogen threat erased from the galaxy. But for Captain Jacob Hicks, the battle was far from over. It had merely shifted from the depths of space to the depths of his own soul. The skies of Koth Prime churned with the ashes of a dying civilization. The once proud Hirogen, reduced to a shadow of their former glory by the ravages of Project Nemesis, staggered through the ruins of their cities. The virus, a cruel and efficient weapon, left no part of their society untouched. In the midst of this chaos, the United Earth Council moved to establish order. A provisional government backed by the might of the human military took control of the planet's shattered infrastructure. Their mission to rebuild, to integrate the surviving Hirogen into a new, human-led society. But not all Hirogen were willing to bow to their conquerors. In the shadows, a warlord named Zorkash gathered those still loyal to the old ways. They were the hardliners, the ones who would rather die fighting than live under human rule. From hidden bases deep in the planet's jungles and mountains, Zorkash's guerrillas struck at the occupation forces. They raided supply convoys, ambushed patrols, and bombed military installations. They fought with the ferocity of a cornered predator, using salvaged weapons and improvised tactics to even the odds against the technologically superior humans. Captain Jacob Hicks, the hero of the Hirogen War, watched the casualty reports pile up with a growing sense of dread. He knew all too well the cost of a prolonged insurgency, the toll it would take on both sides. When the call came from UEC Command, Hicks was ready. Strike Force Omega, the elite unit he had led to victory against the Hirogen, was needed once again. Their mission, to hunt down Zorkash and his rebels, to crush the insurgency before it could plunge Koth Prime back into war. Hicks gathered his team, a mix of battle-hardened veterans and eager new recruits. They were the best of the best, each one hand-picked for their skills and their unwavering dedication to the cause. But as he briefed them on the mission, Hicks couldn't shake the nagging sense of guilt that had plagued him since the end of the war. The memory of the virus, of the millions of Hirogen who had died choking on their own blood, weighed heavy on his conscience. This was his chance, he told himself, to make things right, to bring a lasting peace to Koth Prime, to atone for the sins of the past. Strike Force Omega deployed to the planet's surface, their dropships cutting through the turbulent atmosphere. They set up a forward operating base in the heart of the jungle, a fortified compound bristling with sensors and automated defenses. From there they began their hunt. They combed the dense foliage, following the trails of the Hirogen rebels. They raided suspected hideouts, engaged in fierce firefights in the tangled undergrowth. Hicks led from the front, his pulse rifle barking as he put down rebel after rebel. His team moved with precision, their augmented reflexes and high-tech gear giving them a crucial edge over their foes. But Zorkash was always one step ahead. The wily warlord seemed to anticipate their every move, slipping away just as they closed in. His guerrillas laid traps and ambushes, their knowledge of the terrain proving a formidable advantage. In one particularly brutal engagement, Strike Force Omega found themselves pinned down by heavy fire from a rebel stronghold. Plasma bolts sizzled overhead as Hicks and his team took cover behind the twisted wreckage of a downed dropship. "Flank left," Hicks bellowed over the din of battle, "suppressing fire on my mark." His soldiers responded with crisp efficiency, laying down a blistering barrage as a squad moved to outflank the rebel position. The air crackled with the discharge of energy weapons, the jungle lit by strobing flashes. The rebels fought with grim determination, but they were no match for the speed and coordination of Strike Force Omega. One by one they fell, cut down by precision shots or flushed from cover by searing plasma. As the last of the rebels was dispatched, Hicks surveyed the carnage with a mix of satisfaction and regret. Every Hirogen killed was one less gun pointed at his people, but also a reminder of the terrible price of war. He knelt beside the body of a fallen rebel, a young male barely old enough to hold a rifle. In the Hirogen's lifeless eyes, Hicks saw a reflection of himself, of the soldier he had once been. But there was no time for sentiment, no room for doubt. Zorkash was still out there, and with him the threat of a renewed war. Strike Force Omega pushed deeper into the jungle, following the trail of the warlord. They knew he would not go quietly, that he would fight to the bitter end. And so they pressed on into the heart of darkness, each one ready to pay the ultimate price for the sake of peace. The battle for Koth Prime had only just begun, and Captain Jacob Hicks would see it through to the end, no matter the cost. The jungle air hung heavy and still, the only sound the distant chirping of alien birds. In the command center of Strike Force Omega's forward operating base, Captain Jacob Hicks stared at the holographic display, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Are we certain of this intel?" he asked, his voice tight. Lieutenant Samantha Reeves, the team's intelligence officer, nodded grimly. "Affirmative, sir. Multiple sources confirm Zorkash has a stockpile of chemical weapons specifically designed to target human physiology. He's planning to unleash them on New Hope." Hicks slammed his fist on the table, the display flickering. The human capital on Koth Prime, New Hope, was a symbol of the fragile peace they were trying to build. To lose it would be catastrophic. He turned to his team, the hardened veterans of Strike Force Omega. "We can't let this happen. We're going to take the fight to Zorkash, hit him hard and fast before he can make his move. We're going to end this, once and for all." The team nodded, grim determination etched on their faces. They knew the stakes, knew the price of failure. Within hours, they were in the air, their stealth dropship slicing through the turbulent skies of Koth Prime. Their target, the Kothzal Mountains, a rugged, inhospitable region where Zorkash had his stronghold. As they approached the LZ, the dropship shuddered, plasma fire streaking past the cockpit. Zorkash's forces had spotted them. "Evasive maneuvers," Hicks barked, strapping himself into his seat. "Get us on the ground." The pilot, a grizzled veteran named Hawkins, gritted his teeth as he wrestled with the controls. The dropship lurched and spun, the ground rushing up to meet them. At the last moment, Hawkins pulled up, the belly of the craft scraping the treetops. They hit the ground hard, the impact throwing them against their harnesses, but they were down and in one piece. Hicks was the first out, his pulse rifle at the ready. "Move out," he ordered. "Stick to the plan." Strike Force Omega moved through the jungle, their cloaking devices rendering them nearly invisible. They approached the base perimeter, a wall of reinforced steel bristling with automated defenses. Sergeant Carlson, the team's demolitions expert, set to work, placing charges at key structural points. With a silent countdown, he detonated them, the explosions ripping through the wall like paper. They were in, but the element of surprise was gone. Zorkash's elite guard, clad in advanced power armor, and wielding pulse rifles, poured out to meet them. The jungle erupted into a storm of plasma fire, trees splintering and rocks shattering under the onslaught. Hicks and his team took cover, returning fire with practiced precision. They pushed forward, inch by bloody inch, the ground littered with the broken bodies of Hirogen warriors. But the enemy kept coming, wave after wave of fanatical soldiers throwing themselves at the human strike force. Hicks ducked behind a fallen log, plasma bolts sizzling overhead. Beside him, Lieutenant Thompson, his second-in-command and closest friend, lay down, covering fire. "Just like old times, eh, Jake?" Thompson grinned, his face streaked with sweat and grime. Hicks managed a tight smile. "Let's hope this ends better than Zeta Hercules 4. A crack split the air, a sound Hicks knew all too well. Sniper. He scanned the tree line, looking for the telltale glint of a scope. There. In the high branches of a gnarled tree, a Hirogen sniper lay in wait. Hicks raised his rifle, but he was a split second too slow. The sniper fired, a lance of plasma streaking towards Hicks's heart. But the impact never came. Instead, Thompson was there, throwing himself in front of Hicks. The plasma bolt struck him square in the chest, burning through his armor like tissue paper. "Spike!" Hicks screamed, catching his friend as he fell. Thompson looked up at him, his eyes already glazing over. "Give 'em hell, Jake," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the din of battle. And then he was gone, his body going limp in Hicks's arms. Hicks felt a rage unlike anything he had ever known. It consumed him, burned through him like fire. He rose, his rifle spitting plasma, each shot a promise of vengeance. He fought his way to the command center, a trail of Hirogen dead in his wake. He burst through the doors, his armor scorched and battered, his face a mask of fury. There, standing amid a bank of monitors and control panels, was Zorkash. The warlord was a mountain of muscle and armor, his eyes cold and hard. The great Captain Hicks," Zorkash sneered. "I was wondering when you'd arrive." Hicks said nothing. He dropped his rifle and charged, a roar tearing from his throat. Zorkash met him head-on and they clashed like titans, fists and feet flying in a brutal dance of death. They fought across the command center, smashing through consoles and equipment. Hicks was a skilled combatant, but Zorkash was stronger, faster. A blow sent Hicks crashing to the floor, his head ringing. Zorkash loomed over him, a wicked-looking blade in his hand. "I will mount your head on my wall," he growled. "Your skull will make a fine trophy." But Hicks wasn't done. With a surge of strength he kicked out, his boot catching Zorkash in the knee. The warlord stumbled, his balance lost for a crucial moment. Hicks was on him in an instant, his hands wrapping around Zorkash's throat. They grappled, rolling across the floor, each trying to gain the upper hand. In the end, it was Hicks who prevailed. With a final, desperate effort, he drove his thumb into Zorkash's eye, feeling the orb burst beneath the pressure. The warlord howled in agony, his grip slackening. Hicks grabbed the fallen blade and drove it into Zorkash's chest, piercing the warlord's heart. Zorkash convulsed, his lifeblood pouring out onto the cold metal floor. For a long moment, Hicks stood over the fallen warlord, the blade trembling in his hand. The rage still burned within him, demanding blood, demanding retribution for all he had lost. But as he looked down at Zorkash's broken body, he knew that this was not the way. Killing Zorkash here like this would make him no better than the monsters he fought. With a shaking hand, Hicks tossed the blade aside. "Get a medic in here," he said into his comm, his voice raw. "We're taking him in. He will face justice for his crimes." He turned away, his shoulders slumping under the weight of it all. The war was far from over, and the scars it left, both on the galaxy and on his own soul, would be a long time healing. But for now, at least, there was a glimmer of hope, a chance for peace, however fragile. Hicks limped out of the command center, his mind already turning to the battles ahead. There was still so much to do, so much to rebuild, but he would face it, as he always had. One step at a time, one fight at a time. For Thompson, for all those he had lost, for the future he still believed in, despite it all. With Zorkash's broken body in chains, Captain Jacob Hicks and the remnants of Strike Force Omega boarded their stealth ship, the weight of their Pyrrhic victory hanging heavy on their shoulders. The journey back to Earth was long and somber, the once jubilant crew now haunted by the ghosts of their fallen comrades and the screams of the dying Hirogen. As they entered Earth's orbit, they were greeted not with the hero's welcome they had expected, but with a wall of silence. No cheering crowds, no triumphant fanfare, only the cold, sterile docking bay of the UEC headquarters. Hicks stepped off the ship, Zorkash in tow, only to be met by a grim-faced Admiral Ivanova and a phalanx of armed guards. "Captain Hicks," she said, her voice tight, "you are to surrender yourself for immediate debriefing. Your prisoner will be taken into custody." Hicks, exhausted and confused, could only nod as he was escorted away, the bewildered looks of his crew burning into his back. In the days that followed, the true extent of the horrors inflicted upon the Hirogen came to light. News feeds were flooded with images of the devastation wrought by the Project Nemesis virus, of Hirogen civilians writhing in agony as their bodies were consumed from within, the indiscriminate bombing of Koth Prime, the millions of lives snuffed out in an instant, all laid bare for the galaxy to see. The public, once eager to laud the heroes of the Hirogen War, now recoiled in horror. Protests erupted on 100 worlds, angry mobs demanding justice for the atrocities committed in humanity's name. Hicks, sequestered in a nondescript UEC facility, could only watch helplessly as his team was torn apart. Some were arrested, facing lengthy prison sentences for war crimes. Others, unable to bear the weight of their guilt, took their own lives. With nothing left for him on Earth, Hicks fled to the farthest reaches of human space, to a small, unremarkable colony world where he hoped to lose himself in obscurity. There, in a small, dilapidated shack on the outskirts of the colony, he settled into a life of solitude, his only companions the bottle and his own tormented thoughts. Years passed, the Hirogen War fading into memory as the UEC continued its inexorable expansion across the stars. The Hirogen, their civilization shattered, struggled to rebuild under the watchful eye of their human overseers. Until one day a message arrived, a ghostly hologram flickering to life in the darkness of his shack. It was Korvash, the Hirogen rebel leader, his once proud frame now stooped and frail. "Captain Hicks," he said, his voice a ragged whisper, "I know I have no right to ask for your help, not after what I did on Koth Prime. But my people, they suffer under the heel of your government's puppets. They need a champion, someone to fight for them. They need you." Korvash's eyes, once filled with defiance, now shimmered with tears. "I betrayed you, betrayed my own honor because they threatened my family. But I see now that I was a coward. I beg you, return to Koth Prime. Help me make things right." Hicks, his eyes bloodshot and his beard unkempt, stared at the hologram for a long, silent moment. Then, with a shaking hand, he reached for his old pulse rifle, the weapon feeling both foreign and familiar in his grip. He had a chance, he realized, to atone for his sins, to bring justice to a world he had helped to break. It was a chance he couldn't pass up, even if it cost him his life. The journey back to Koth Prime was a blur, a series of clandestine shuttles and false identities. When he finally set foot on the planet's surface once more, he hardly recognized it. The once proud Hirogen cities now lay in ruins, the streets filled with the hollow-eyed stares of a broken people. Guided by Korvash's intel, Hicks made his way to the heart of the UEC's power on Koth Prime, a towering fortress that served as the central command for the occupation forces. As he approached the heavily guarded perimeter, his cloak shimmering in the harsh sunlight, he knew that there would be no second chances. This was his moment, his shot at redemption. With a deep breath, Captain Jacob Hicks, the hero turned pariah, the savior turned sinner, stepped forward into the unknown, ready to face his destiny, whatever it might be. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.